The observation deck of the Corinthian flagship buzzed with amusement as Admiral Thexler pressed his four-fingered hand against the viewport. His mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species, a sound like stones grinding together in a metal drum. "Look at it," he said, gesturing toward the human vessel crawling through the asteroid belt at the edge of the Velix system. "They actually sent that thing to challenge us." His officers gathered around, their luminescent eyes reflecting the distant glow of the human ship. The vessel moved with all the grace of a wounded animal dragging itself toward water. While Corinthian cruisers could cross a solar system in hours, while the swift Velani scouts could outrun light itself through careful manipulation of quantum tunneling, the human ship plodded forward as though space itself were thick mud. Sub-Commander Yelix pulled up the tactical display, her scales rippling with barely contained mirth. "Our sensors indicate they are traveling at 0.03% of maximum galactic standard velocity. At this rate, it will take them 3 rotations just to reach weapons range." 3 rotations, Thexler repeated, shaking his crested head. "Do the humans not understand that we could destroy their entire colony on Velix 4 and return home for evening meal before they even arrive?" The bridge crew erupted in their grinding laughter. For 200 years, the Galactic Concordance had watched humanity spread from their unremarkable yellow star into the wider cosmos. And for 200 years, every species in the known galaxy had regarded them as something between a curiosity and a punchline. The humans were slow, impossibly, laughably slow. While every other spacefaring civilization had cracked the secrets of faster-than-light travel within centuries of leaving their homeworlds, humanity remained stubbornly bound by the cosmic speed limit. Their ships crawled between stars over generations, their crews sleeping in frozen pods while the universe spun on without them. They built massive generation ships where children were born, grew old, and died without ever seeing their destination. The Galactic Concordance had debated what to do about them for decades. The Velani wanted to gift them drive technology out of what they called moral obligation to uplift the lesser species. The Corinthians argued for leaving them alone as a protected curiosity, like a nature preserve for a primitive ecosystem. The crystalline Morthax suggested simply ignoring them entirely, noting that by the time humans reached anywhere important, the heat death of the universe would likely be well underway. In the end, the Concordance had done nothing. Humanity was no threat. They were barely a footnote. Until 3 months ago, when a human colony ship had drifted into the Velix system and found a world that the Corinthian Empire had claimed 6 centuries prior. The humans, apparently unaware or uncaring of Corinthian territorial markers, had begun establishing settlements on Velix 4. Admiral Thexler had been dispatched with a fleet of 12 warships to resolve the situation. He had expected to find desperate colonists begging for mercy or perhaps already evacuating. Instead, he found 40,000 humans who had politely but firmly refused to leave, and a single warship that had been dispatched from the nearest human military outpost to negotiate. That warship now hung in his viewport like a joke made manifest. "Admiral," Communications Officer Brennick spoke up, his voice carrying the undertone of someone about to deliver more entertainment. "The human vessel is hailing us. They are requesting dialogue." "Put them through," Thexler said, settling into his command throne. "I could use some amusement before we begin the bombardment." The main viewscreen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the human ship. It was cramped by Corinthian standards, packed with equipment and displays that looked almost quaint compared to the holographic interfaces of more advanced civilizations. In the center of the frame sat a human female in a gray uniform, her face weathered by age and marked by lines that Thexler had learned indicated stress in the mammalian species. "I am Captain Patricia Holloway of the Earth Defense Force vessel Patience," the human said. Her voice was calm, almost eerily so given the circumstances. "I am authorized to speak on behalf of the human settlement on Velix 4. Thexler leaned forward, his mandibles spreading in what he hoped the human would recognize as a smile. "Captain Holloway, I am Admiral Thexler of the Corinthian Imperial Navy. I must say, your vessel's name is rather appropriate. Patience is indeed what one would need to travel anywhere in that thing. His bridge crew chittered at the joke, but the human's expression did not change. Admiral, I am here to inform you that the settlement on Velix 4 is a legally established human colony under Earth Coalition law. The colonists have no intention of leaving. I am requesting that you withdraw your fleet and allow for proper diplomatic channels to resolve this territorial dispute. Thexler stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned to look at Yelix. The sub-commander's scales had gone pale with disbelief. Captain, Thexler said slowly, as though speaking to a particularly slow child, you are aware that you have one ship, I have 12. You are aware that your vessel will take 3 days to even reach our position. You are aware that I could reduce your colony to glass in the time it takes you to finish this sentence. I am aware of all of those things, Admiral. Then why are you here? What could you possibly hope to accomplish? The human captain tilted her head slightly, and something in her eyes made Thexler's stomach clench in a way he did not entirely understand. Admiral Thexler, humanity has spent 200 years watching faster species zip around the galaxy while we crawled between stars at a fraction of light speed. We have watched empires rise and fall while our colony ships drifted through the void. We have buried generation after generation aboard vessels that moved so slowly that the stars themselves seemed frozen in place. She leaned forward. Do you know what that kind of time does to a species, Admiral? What it does to our science, our engineering, our weapons development? Thexler felt a flicker of unease, but he pushed it aside. I imagine it leaves you rather far behind. Behind? Captain Holloway smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, your species developed faster than light travel 1100 years ago. Since then, you have been so busy racing from star to star that you have had no need to improve your weapons technology. Why would you? When you can always run away or simply arrive first, raw firepower becomes almost irrelevant. She stood up from her command chair and walked closer to the screen. Humanity cannot run away. Humanity cannot arrive first. For 2 centuries, every strategic problem we have faced has had to be solved with one assumption at the core. We will be slower, we will be outnumbered, and we will have no way to retreat. Every weapon we have developed, every defensive system we have created, every tactical doctrine we have written has been built around that single, unavoidable truth. The bridge had gone very quiet. Thexler noticed that his officers were no longer laughing. You find our ship slow, Admiral. Laughable. But consider this. While your civilization has been playing at war with weapons your ancestors would recognize, humanity has been preparing for the day when we would finally meet someone we could not run from, when we would have to stand and fight against a faster, more numerous enemy with no possibility of retreat. Captain Holloway's voice dropped to something almost gentle. Admiral Thexler, I am not requesting that you withdraw your fleet because I expect you to show mercy. I am requesting it because what happens next if you do not will not be mercy either. Thexler stared at the human for a long moment. Then he threw back his head and let out a full, rolling laugh. Captain, I commend your bravery, truly I do. But you cannot seriously expect me to believe that your species, which has never won a single military engagement against any concordance member, which has never demonstrated any weapon technology beyond basic kinetic projectiles and crude fusion warheads, poses a meaningful threat to a Corinthian battle fleet. He waved a dismissive hand. Your 3-day journey to reach us will be a very long time to contemplate your miscalculation. When you finally arrive, assuming you do not turn back, you will watch your colony burn, and then you will join them. This communication is over. The screen went dark. Thexler turned to his bridge crew, spreading his arms wide. Well, what are you all standing around for? Begin orbital positioning for the bombardment. I want that colony reduced to ash within the hour. His officers moved to comply, but Yelix lingered by his side. Admiral, the human seemed very confident. Bluffing. Their species has always been skilled at diplomacy and misdirection. It is all they have. Thexler settled back into his throne. They cannot fight. Everyone knows this. Now carry out my orders. The fleet began its approach toward Velix 4, 12 massive warships moving in perfect formation. Their plasma cannons began charging, their targeting systems locking onto the human settlements dotting the planet's surface. 40,000 humans waited below, watching the sky fill with ships that could have destroyed their world 1,000 times over. Far behind, the Patience continued its slow, inexorable crawl through the asteroid belt. And then everything changed. The first indication that something was wrong came from the sensor officer, a young Corinthian named Drelax whose voice cracked as he spoke. "Admiral, I am detecting an energy buildup from the human vessel." "What kind of energy buildup?" I do not know, Admiral. My instruments cannot classify it, but it is significant, very significant." Thexler frowned. "Put it on screen." The viewport shifted to show the distant human ship. At first, nothing seemed different. The same ugly, ungainly vessel hung in the void, seemingly motionless against the backdrop of tumbling asteroids. Then Thexler noticed the glow. It started at the bow of the Patience, a soft blue luminescence that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. As he watched, the glow intensified, spreading along the hull in geometric patterns that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The ship itself seemed to be reshaping, panels sliding aside to reveal something that had been hidden beneath its mundane exterior. "What is that?" Yelix whispered. The answer came in the form of a weapon the galaxy had never seen. The forward section of the Patience split open like a flower blooming, revealing a barrel that seemed impossibly large for the vessel containing it. The blue glow concentrated there, building to an intensity that turned the viewscreen almost white. Sensor alarms began screaming across the bridge. "Energy readings are off the scale," Drelax shouted, his voice edged with panic. "I have never seen anything like this. The power output is, Admiral, it is exceeding the total energy production of our entire fleet combined." "That is impossible," Thexler said, but his voice lacked conviction. "One ship cannot." The Patience fired. Later, the survivors would struggle to describe what they saw. The official Corinthian naval report would call it a directed energy discharge of unprecedented magnitude. The human press would eventually dub it the long gun. But in the moment, all Thexler knew was that the universe itself seemed to crack open. A beam of pure, concentrated energy lanced across the void. It crossed the distance between the Patience and the Corinthian fleet in less than a heartbeat, a distance that should have taken the human ship 3 days to traverse. It struck the command ship Relentless Glory amidships, and for a single frozen instant, Thexler saw the vessel outlined in blinding light. Then the Relentless Glory ceased to exist, not destroyed, not blown apart, simply gone. The beam passed through where the ship had been and continued onward, punching through a second cruiser before finally losing coherence somewhere in the outer system. 2 Corinthian warships, each carrying over 1,000 crew members, erased from existence in less than a second. The bridge of Thexler's flagship went completely silent. Then the Patience fired again. The second shot claimed another cruiser, this one on the far side of the formation. The fleet, which moments ago had been moving in disciplined order toward an easy target, scattered like insects fleeing a fire. Ships broke in every direction, their captains abandoning formation in desperate attempts to escape the human weapon. "Full retreat," Thexler screamed, all pretense of composure abandoned. "All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. Get us out of here." "Admiral," his navigation officer responded, his voice thin with terror, "hyperspace engines are being disrupted. There is some kind of interference field. We cannot form a stable jump point." Thexler spun to face the viewport, where the Patience still hung in the distance, that terrible blue glow building once more at its bow. He thought of Captain Holloway's words, spoken with such quiet certainty. "Every strategic problem we have faced has had to be solved with one assumption at the core. We will be slower, we will be outnumbered, and we will have no way to retreat." They had built a weapon that could strike across interstellar distances. They had developed technology that could prevent faster-than-light escape. They had been preparing for exactly this moment for 200 years. The third shot fired and another ship vanished from existence. "Open a channel," Thexler ordered, his voice hollow. "Tell them we surrender. Tell them we will withdraw immediately. Tell them anything, just make them stop." The channel opened, and Captain Holloway's face appeared on the screen once more. She looked exactly as she had before, calm and weathered and utterly unsurprised by what had transpired. "Admiral Thexler," she said, her voice as even as if she were discussing the weather, "I see you have decided to reconsider your position." "How?" he managed to croak. "How is this possible? Your civilization has never demonstrated weapons technology anywhere close to this capability." "Demonstrated, no." Holloway's smile returned, thin and cold. "But then, we never needed to demonstrate it before. The galaxy was content to leave us alone, to laugh at us from a distance. We saw no reason to correct that misconception." She folded her hands in front of her. "Admiral, while your species was developing faster ships, humanity was developing better weapons. While the Velani were perfecting their quantum tunneling drives, we were unlocking the fundamental forces of the universe. While the Morthacs were expanding their crystal matrices across 1,000 worlds, we were learning to channel energies that would make a supernova look like a candle flame. The long gun you just witnessed is one of our older designs. We have had it for 80 years. We simply never had reason to use it until now." Thexler felt his legs weaken. 80 years. They had possessed this kind of power for 80 years and had kept it hidden. How much more did they have? What other weapons were waiting in humanity's slow, plodding ships? "What do you want?" he asked, hating the pleading note in his voice. "What I wanted from the beginning, Admiral. A peaceful resolution. The colonists on Velix 4 stay where they are. Your fleet withdraws from this system, and the Galactic Concordance acknowledges human territorial claims to any world we have settled. The Concordance will never agree to. Then you should probably contact them and explain the situation." Holloway leaned back in her chair. "We are patient people, Admiral. We can wait, but I suggest you do not test that patience too far." The communication ended. Thexler stood on his bridge, surrounded by officers too shocked to speak, watching the distant glow of the human ship pulse with barely restrained power. Around him, the shattered remnants of his fleet drifted in disarray, their commanders desperately trying to restore some semblance of order. 3 ships had been destroyed. 3,000 Corinthians were dead, and the human vessel had not even moved from its position. "Get me a channel to Corinthian High Command," Thexler said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "And may the ancestors help us all." The emergency session of the Galactic Concordance convened 3 days later in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, the artificial world that served as the political heart of known space. Representatives from every major species had been summoned, their holographic avatars flickering around the vast circular hall like ghosts at a funeral. Ambassador Zethkel of the Velani Collective opened the proceedings, his serpentine form coiling and uncoiling with obvious agitation. "The report from the Velix system has been verified by multiple sources. The human weapon is real. Its capabilities are unprecedented, and we have no defense against it. How could we have missed this?" demanded Crystalline Prime Morthax 7, its faceted body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. "We have been observing human civilization for 2 centuries. Our sensors, our spies, our diplomatic observers. How did they develop this technology without our knowledge?" "Because we were not looking," Zethkel replied grimly. "We assumed their slow ships meant slow progress. We assumed that because they could not match our propulsion technology, they could not match us in any way that mattered. We were arrogant fools, all of us." Admiral Thexler stood before the assembly, his normally proud bearing reduced to something approaching humility. He had been summoned to provide a first-hand account of the battle, though calling it a battle seemed almost absurd. It had been an execution. "The weapon fires at what appears to be light speed or very close to it," he reported, consulting the data pad in his trembling hands. "Our analysis suggests it operates on principles we do not fully understand, something involving the manipulation of quantum vacuum states and directed energy release. The power requirements alone should be impossible for a vessel of that size." "Yet clearly they are not impossible," Morthax 7 observed. "The humans achieved them." "There is more," Thexler continued. "During the engagement, our hyperspace drives were rendered inoperable. We believe the humans deployed some form of suppression field that prevents the formation of stable jump points. We were trapped in normal space, unable to retreat." A murmur rippled through the assembly. For species that had built their entire military doctrine around the ability to disengage and redeploy at will, the implications were terrifying. "This changes everything," Zethkal said slowly. "If the humans can deny us faster than light retreat, if they can strike at us from beyond our engagement range, then every assumption we have made about galactic warfare is obsolete." "We should have seen this coming," said Counselor Dreth of the Corinthian delegation, his voice bitter. "Think about their history. Humans evolved as persistent predators on their homeworld. They would chase prey for days, wearing down faster animals through sheer endurance. They crossed oceans in wooden boats, knowing they might never return. They sent their children into space in generation ships, accepting that they themselves would never see the destination." He looked around the chamber. "We thought their slowness was a weakness. We thought their patience was a sign of passivity. We were wrong. Their slowness made them think in longer terms than any of us. Their patience made them invest in solutions that would pay off over generations rather than years. The question now is, what do we do about it?" Morthex 7 interjected. "Do we go to war? Can we afford to go to war against a species that has spent 200 years preparing for exactly such a conflict?" "No." The voice came from the edge of the chamber, where a human hologram had been waiting quietly throughout the proceedings. Ambassador Gerald Park was an older man with silver hair and a calm demeanor that seemed almost out of place in the tense atmosphere of the great chamber. "You cannot afford to go to war against us," Park continued, stepping forward into the center of the assembly. "And before you ask, neither do we want war. The long gun is a defensive weapon developed because we knew that one day we would encounter a situation exactly like this one. A faster, stronger power threatening human lives, with no possibility of retreat or negotiation through conventional means." He paused, letting his words settle over the assembly. "We have other weapons. We have technologies that would make the long gun seem like a child's toy. We have had 2 centuries to prepare, and we have used every moment of that time. But we did not develop these things because we wanted to conquer. We developed them because we wanted to survive." "What does humanity want?" Zethkal asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Recognition, respect, the right to exist and expand without being treated as a curiosity or a threat. We do not ask for special treatment, only equal treatment. Let us settle the worlds we have reached, trade with us fairly, include us in the concordance as full members, not as observers or protected species. And if we refuse," Park's expression did not change, "then nothing changes. We will continue to expand at our own pace, settle our own worlds, develop our own technologies. We will not attack you. We have no interest in empire or conquest. But we will defend ourselves and we will protect our people. The galaxy is large enough for all of us if you allow it to be." The assembly fell silent, the representatives of a dozen spacefaring civilizations processing the fundamental shift in their understanding of the universe. For 200 years they had pitied humanity, mocked them, ignored them, and all that time humanity had been quietly, patiently building the tools of their own liberation. "We need time to discuss this," Zethkal said finally. "Take all the time you need, Ambassador." Park smiled, and there was something almost gentle in it. "We are used to waiting." 6 months later, the Galactic Concordance formally admitted humanity as a full member species. The vote was unanimous, though whether this was due to genuine acceptance or simple pragmatism remained a matter of debate among historians for centuries to come. Captain Patricia Holloway received commendation for her handling of the Velix crisis, though she deflected most of the credit to her crew and the scientists who had developed the long gun decades before she was born. When asked by reporters how she had felt facing down 12 warships with a single vessel, she simply shrugged. "We knew what we had," she said. "The hard part was keeping it secret until we needed it." Admiral Thexler retired from the Corinthian Navy shortly after the Velix incident, as it came to be known. He spent his remaining years writing a treatise on human military philosophy, a work that became required reading at naval academies across the galaxy. The central thesis was simple but profound: never mistake patience for weakness, and never assume that those who move slowly are thinking slowly. The humans, for their part, continued their slow expansion across the stars. Their generation ships still took decades to reach new worlds. Their colony vessels still crawled through space at fractions of light speed while faster species zipped past them. They still slept in their frozen pods and buried their dead in the void between stars. But no one laughed at them anymore. Because now the galaxy understood the truth that humans had known all along. Speed was just one way to win a race. Sometimes the surest path to victory was simply to keep moving forward, no matter how long it took, preparing for the moment when everything would finally come together. The humans had been preparing for 200 years. They could wait a little longer. In the years that followed the Velix incident, the nature of human integration into galactic society proved to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The Concordants had expected either grateful supplicants or arrogant conquerors. Instead, they got something much harder to handle: equals. Human merchants began appearing in ports across known space, their ships creaking and groaning as they docked alongside sleek Velani traders and the crystalline vessels of the Morthax. The goods they brought were unremarkable, but their prices were competitive, and their reputation for reliability quickly grew. A human trader might take years to deliver a shipment that a Corinthian could transport in days, but the humans always delivered. Always. Human scientists were invited to join research consortiums across the galaxy, and their contributions proved unexpectedly valuable. While they lacked the theoretical brilliance of the Velani or the computational prowess of the Morthax, humans brought a different perspective to problem solving. They thought in terms of generations rather than months. They considered the long-term implications of discoveries that other species would have exploited and forgotten within years. Most importantly, humans brought patience to a galaxy that had forgotten what the word meant. Counselor Dreth, who had become something of an expert on human affairs in the wake of the Velix incident, delivered a famous speech to the Corinthian Senate 5 years after humanity's admission to the Concordance. "We have spent a millennium racing across the stars," he said, "moving so fast that we never stopped to ask where we were going. The humans cannot race. They cannot rush. And because of this limitation, they have learned something that we forgot long ago. The destination matters less than what you become during the journey." He gestured toward the stars visible through the Senate's great windows. "Look at what they built while we were laughing at them. Look at the weapons they created, the technologies they developed, the society they forged in the crucible of endless waiting. And ask yourself, what could we have built if we had been willing to wait?" The speech was controversial, but its influence spread far beyond Corinthian space. For the first time in recorded history, galactic civilization began to question its obsession with speed. Not everyone welcomed the change, of course. There were those who viewed humanity's rise with suspicion and fear. If the humans had hidden the long gun for 80 years, what else might they be concealing? If they had developed weapons capable of destroying warships in a single shot, what prevented them from using those weapons for conquest? The answer, as it turned out, was nothing except choice. 20 years after the Velix incident, a human colony ship arrived at a world in the outer reaches of Morthax territory. The Morthax, despite their official acceptance of humanity's Concordance membership, had quietly hoped that their distant holdings would remain beyond human reach. The appearance of the colony vessel, the Wanderer, came as an unpleasant surprise. Crystalline Prime Morthax 12, the regional administrator, dispatched a diplomatic vessel to investigate. What they found challenged every assumption the Morthax had made about human intentions. The Wanderer had been traveling for 117 years. Its original passengers had died during the voyage, as had their children. The colonists who emerged from the ship were the great-great-grandchildren of those who had originally set out from Earth. They had been born in the void, raised in the void, and knew the void as their first home. They brought no weapons, no soldiers, no demands, just a request to settle on a world that the Morthax had claimed but never colonized. "We have been traveling for longer than most of your colonists have been alive," the ship's captain, a woman named Lisa Cartwright, explained to the Morthax delegation. "Our ancestors chose this destination because your surveys indicated it was habitable. We do not ask for charity, only the opportunity to build something from the emptiness. Morthex 12 was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. Your ancestors departed knowing they would never reach their destination. Your parents were born knowing they would never see the stars their grandparents had chosen. Your children will be the first to walk on ground that has been a dream for 5 generations. Yes, Cartwright said simply. Why? Why would anyone accept such a burden? Cartwright smiled, the expression of someone who had answered this question many times before. Because the alternative was to stand still. Because our ancestors believed that some journeys are worth taking even if you will never see the end. Because somewhere out there, a great-great-granddaughter of mine will stand on a world that exists because people a century ago decided that waiting was not the same as giving up. The Morthax granted permission for the colony. More than that, they provided assistance, resources, and technology to help the human settlers establish themselves. When asked why, Morthax 12 gave an answer that would be quoted for generations. Because anyone willing to wait 100 years for a dream deserves to see it come true. 50 years after the Velix incident, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. Human influence extended far beyond the handful of worlds their slow ships had reached. Their ideas, their philosophy, their way of seeing the universe had spread like ripples in a pond. The Velani, once the most impatient species in the Concordance, had begun building what they called long projects, research initiatives designed to span centuries rather than years. Their scientists complained bitterly about the change, but the results spoke for themselves. Problems that had resisted quick solutions for millennia began yielding to sustained, patient investigation. The Corinthians had reformed their military doctrine entirely. Speed was no longer considered the ultimate advantage. Instead, their strategists studied human principles of defensive preparation, of building capabilities over time rather than relying on mobility alone. A new generation of Corinthian officers learned that sometimes the best strategy was simply to wait. Even the Morthax, ancient and crystalline and slow-changing by nature, had been influenced by human contact. Their culture, which had remained static for eons, began to evolve in subtle ways. New art forms emerged. New philosophies took root. The Morthax discovered that even beings made of living stone could learn something from soft, fragile, impossibly patient humans. And through it all, the human ships kept crawling between the stars. They never did develop faster than light travel. Their scientists made progress on the theoretical foundations, but the engineering challenges proved insurmountable given human technology. Some speculated that this was deliberate, that the humans chose not to solve a problem they did not need to solve. Others argued that it was simply a limitation of human capability, a ceiling that not even patience could overcome. The truth, as always, was more complicated. In a classified research facility on Earth's moon, a team of human scientists worked on Project Horizon, the most ambitious engineering effort in human history. For 75 years, they had been developing a faster-than-light drive based on principles that no other species had ever imagined. The work was slow, methodical, and completely secret. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the project's third director in its history, reviewed the latest test results with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We are close," he told his assembled team. "Another decade, maybe 2, and we will have a working prototype." "Should we inform the Concordance?" asked his deputy, a young physicist named Maria Santos. "The political implications alone." "No," Walsh shook his head firmly. "Not yet. Maybe not for another century. The galaxy has just started to accept us as we are. If they learn we are developing FTL capability, everything will change again. They will see us as a threat once more. But eventually they will have to know." "Eventually, yes, but we are patient, Maria. We have been patient for 250 years. We can be patient a little longer." Walsh smiled, the expression of a man who knew he would never see the fruits of his labor but worked toward them anyway. "Let the galaxy think what it wants about us. Let them believe we are content to crawl between the stars forever. One day, when our descendants decide the time is right, we will show them what patience truly builds." He turned to look at the stars through the facility's observation window, at the distant lights of civilizations that had once mocked humanity's slowness. "We have all the time in the universe," he said softly, "and we are not done surprising them yet." 100 years after the Velix incident, the Galactic Concordance held a centennial celebration. Representatives from every member species gathered on Nexus Prime, now expanded to accommodate a growing and increasingly interconnected galactic community. Holographic displays showed highlights from a century of cooperation, conflict, and change. In the center of the Great Chamber, a monument had been erected to commemorate the anniversary. It depicted a human ship, small and ungainly, facing a vast fleet of alien warships. The caption read simply, "Patience prevails." Captain Patricia Holloway had died 43 years earlier, but her granddaughter, Commander Rachel Holloway, attended the ceremony as the official human representative. She looked at the monument with an expression that mixed pride and something deeper, something that only another human might have understood. "Your ancestor was remarkable," said the current Velani ambassador, a young serpentine being named Zethkal IV, descended from the same line as the ambassador who had presided over humanity's admission to the Concordance. "She changed everything." "She did what any human would have done in her position," Rachel replied. "She waited for the right moment and then acted decisively. Our entire history has been built on that principle. And yet you continue to build slow ships. You continue to send your people on journeys that take generations. Even now, with the resources of the Concordance available to you, you choose patience over speed." Rachel smiled, and something flickered in her eyes that Zethkal IV could not quite interpret. "Ambassador, there is an old human saying, 'Good things come to those who wait.' We have been waiting for a very long time, and we will keep waiting until the moment is exactly right." "The moment for what?" The human commander looked up at the stars visible through the chamber's great dome, at the distant lights of 1,000 civilizations spread across 100,000 light years. "When I was a girl," she said, "my grandmother told me a story. She said that when humanity first reached the stars, we looked at all the faster species racing past us and felt small, insignificant, left behind. But she said that her grandmother, who had served on one of the first-generation ships, had a different perspective." Rachel turned to face the Velani ambassador directly. "Her grandmother said that the universe was not a race. It was a garden, and while everyone else was rushing to pick the fruit before it was ripe, humans were learning to plant seeds that would take centuries to grow. Seeds that would one day become forests so vast that not even the fastest ship could cross them." Zethkal IV considered this for a long moment. "And what kind of forest have you been planting?" Rachel's smile widened. "The kind that will still be growing long after both of us are gone. The kind that our great-great-grandchildren will walk through and never know where it ends. The kind that changes everything, one patient step at a time." She raised her glass in a toast, her eyes reflecting the starlight from above. "To patience," she said, "and to all the surprises still to come." Across the great chamber, representatives from every corner of the galaxy raised their glasses in response. And somewhere in the deep black between the stars, human ships continued their slow, steady journey toward destinations that would not be reached for generations yet. They were in no hurry. After all, they had all the time in the universe. And they knew, better than anyone, that the best surprises were always worth waiting for. The galaxy had mocked the slow human warship. One shot had erased their laughter. But that was only the beginning of a story that would unfold over centuries. A story of patience and preparation and quiet, unstoppable determination. A story that humanity had been writing since the first human looked up at the stars and decided that distance was no obstacle to those willing to wait. The end.